how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond.
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't fly!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're gonna get.
For this episode, I sit down and chat with Drew Desky. Drew has a fascinating background in chemistry and mathematics. And I know what you're thinking. Why or how does that have to do with entertainment? Well, Drew just started with his husband, Dane Levins, and good friend, Michael Mills. They've started DDM Productions, New York City's latest and greatest production office. Current production they're working on is Passing Through, a new musical at Goodspeed Musicals. Set amidst the rich sound and diverse tapestry of the American landscape, Passing Through tells the incredibly true story of a man who journeys on foot from Pennsylvania to California, collecting stories as he goes. But when his trek brings to light an unresolved family crisis, he must use the lessons he's gathered to finally confront his past. Don't miss the musical that celebrates America and the power of what can happen when we open ourselves up to a stranger. I can't wait to see this show, and you should definitely go check it out. August 18th, it'll be closing, so there'll be some time between this episode coming out and the closing of that production. Funny enough, we don't actually even talk about this production in our interview. We talk about literally everything that has led up to his association with Passing Through. So this is a fun journey, if you will, of a conversation with Drew Desky, and I hope you enjoy. We're back. I'm Clayton Howe, and today with me is Drew Desky.
Hi,
Drew, thank you for sitting down with me this morning.
Thank you for having me here.
Afternoon, almost afternoon, of course. So we have a bunch that we're going to cover. Hopefully we get it in one part, but there might be a part two here. This will be fun and exciting. I want to just jump right in. What were your theater dreams growing up? Did you have any?
I didn't really. I was in the drama club in high school.
Yeah.
But I also played piano from the age of 6. So I was driven toward music. I loved theater.
Yeah.
The very first Broadway show I saw when my parents brought me to New York on vacation when I was 11 was the original On the 20th Century.
Oh, really?
So we got the vinyl cast album.
Yeah.
I played that to death.
Oh, I love it.
The other musical, which actually I saw is the movie, was 1776, which just told a brilliant story. And I got that cast album, played it to death.
Wow.
And I went to Thanksgiving to visit friends in Las Vegas one year, people who live there. And the national tour of Chorus Line was going on there. So 3 very different shows.
Yeah.
But it really showed the variety of what theater could do, what stories it could tell. And so I loved that, but I always tell people that English is my second language because music is my first language. So when I got to college, and I was not a music or theater major, but I sang in a couple different groups.
Yeah.
And they asked me to direct the Glee Club. And in order to do that, I had to take a conducting class. And in order to do that, I said, why not double my major with music? And so I pursued the music route.
Perfect.
But I've always had a passion for theater, but I never had any dreams that I was actually going to be in theater as a career.
Okay, so we're going to be taking a few pauses here, and I'm going to ask many questions. I didn't know you played piano. We've been chatting now for like a couple of weeks. I had no idea you played piano. Do you still play? Like recreationally, for fun?
I wish I played more. I wish I had time to play more.
Right.
And I play a couple of things,
Yeah.
but I really have lost the time to practice as I should.
Yeah.
And when it came down to it in college, piano performance was not my concentration. My concentration was actually in composing and conducting.
Okay.
So when I moved to New York, my artistic outlet, I joined 3 singing groups beyond my finance career.
Right.
One was the University Glee Club of New York City, which is a 175-member traditional all-male collegiate-style glee club that was founded in 1894 and is still performing today. And we got to perform in places like Carnegie Hall and Avery Fisher Hall. And on the 100th anniversary, we were invited to perform at the White House. And another one was a small co-ed vocal jazz ensemble called the Uptown Sound.
Yeah.
And the third one was a close harmony all-male a cappella group that I directed called the Metronomes, Gnomes.
Clever. And in between all these performances, you're still doing finance.
Yes. I was besides music, my other major was chemistry with a math minor.
Okay.
When I got to organic chemistry,
Yeah.
I never wanted to see the inside of a lab again. And I didn't go into music because I actually wanted to eat, or so I thought at the time. So my thought was, music and math and chemistry are all very analytical. I had a facility with numbers. I was very much shy and introverted, but I liked people.
Yeah.
And I thought, what could I pursue to really make all that a focus of what I did as a career? And so I thought about finance. Without a finance background, I applied to 19 jobs out of college, got 2 offers, and I took one into a bank training program. Irving Trust, a bank that no longer exists, has been merged out of existence.
Oh, wow.
But I had to learn accounting and corporate finance from the ground up here, and I enjoyed it.
This is a really, hearing your background and what it's leading up to, because we will get to theater and entertainment, anyone who's listening, is that you have such a strong financial background, and that's so important when creating art. I mean, it's money, makes the world go round, as they say in cabaret.
Yes, they do.
What was the transition then from finance into like producing and finance of theater? What prompted that?
That was prompted by 2 things. One was the Great Recession of 2008.
The Great Recession. Yeah.
And I had been working at Citigroup at the time.
Right.
And Citi dissolved the entire department of 55 people that I was working in. And I was out of a job, and prospects during 2008, 2009 were dim for finding a new job. So
Right.
I happened across, I reached out to a lot of people who I knew. And one of them was an executive recruiter who I knew both personally and professionally. And he said, why don't you come in and work on doing some business development for us and use this computer, and you can just use this to search for a new job as well.
Yeah.
And I found that we really enjoyed working together. And then he asked me, do you want to join full time?
Yeah.
And it would have been it was a complete reinvention, but I ended up saying yes. We found that we had the same philosophy. We really enjoyed nurturing long-term relationships with people. I had done that in my prior career in finance, and I was just going to, because the focus of this recruiting firm is financial services, I was going to apply what I knew from finance. I was just going to apply it differently. So it gave me, the reason why I bring that up is that I was, during that unpaid consultancy, I was walking from my apartment to the office on Fifth Avenue. And every day I would walk past the Actors Equity Building. And there, in the morning before the old office opened at 8 a.m., on the street was a long line of performers looking to get into the building for open auditions in every kind of weather, in snow, in rain, in extreme heat. And it was very inspirational. And I just thought, these people are so passionate about their industry, and I've enjoyed what they do every day as an audience member. I would love to get more involved in that as well. That led me to seek out a volunteer opportunity at Broadway Cares. And so I met with the director of development at Broadway Cares. We had scheduled a 30-minute meeting. 2.5 hours later, we're still chatting in the office. It's just one of those meeting of the minds. Yes.
That's
and
great.
we came up with the idea to found a leadership council to attract new major donors to Broadway Cares
That's great.
and to steward the existing ones.
Yeah.
And I had known a bit about Broadway Cares, but not that much. And then I have found it is just one of the most passionate and worthwhile organizations I've ever worked with. So through Broadway Cares, I've met people in the industry. My other connection, and I always call this 6 degrees of Jason Tam. I've known Jason Tam since he was a working actor and he had been on television on One Life to Live.
Yeah.
And our paths had crossed. And how I got into the producing side originally was that, and this is the power of relationships and the power of introductions and talking to people. Jason was in Marry Me a Little, directed by Jonathan Silverstein. So I met Jonathan. Jonathan said, you really need to get to know Lauren Molina, who is Jason's co-star in this, who was performing at the Bucks County Playhouse at their gala. We got to meet her. She found out that we were engaged. We just fell in with each other. She is half of the Skivvies, so she introduced us to Nick Searley, her performing partner in the Skivvies. And he asked me to take a meeting with Andy Samberg and Shea Sullivan, who were on the verge of putting on the revival of Pageant the Musical. And that was my first producing project. So again, 6 degrees of Jason Tam.
Yeah, literally. That's wow. Wow. Okay. So you said you enjoy, or if this is what I heard, it's like I'm going to say, you said back in the, I heard future, what was it? I'm trying to remember the wording now. Nurturing long-term relationships. And that's a passion of yours in the finance world and theater world as well. Is the professional relationships in finance similar to theater? Is it a smaller community than you think? Or is it not so much? It's just a big...
Finance is a huge community.
Yeah.
It's larger than theater.
Definitely larger. I'm just wondering about here in this, because you worked here in the city.
It's larger
still
even
larger.
here in the city.
Okay.
And this is the one thing about living and working in New York City is
Right.
that there are so many people and so many good people
Yeah.
that you want to meet all of them.
Of course.
You can't. And you can't. If you do meet good people, sometimes it's very hard to keep up with them because there are so many. Yeah. And when, as the years go by, you just meet more and more. Yeah. Someone back in the day gave me their definition of wisdom. And I've always held fast to this. Wisdom is the knowledge that you can meet someone and generate a relationship with them. But given how busy everyone is and the passage of time, sometimes you won't see each other for a period of time. And it's the ability without any repercussions to pick it up, just like that.
Yeah.
And keep moving it forward.
Yeah. Well, because I imagine bringing that passion and talent of yours to nurture long-lasting relationships in the theater industry is very valuable. Because it's all about, I mean, like you said, it is all about who you know, 6 degrees, 3 degrees, 2 degrees of separation.
Right.
So that's just so, okay. So then in terms of finance, and I just want to go back to finance for a second. We're going to keep going back to finance. Lessons learned regarding it. And this is a large question, and I know we're going to get more specific as we go on here. But are there any standout principles regarding finance that come to mind or lessons learned in regards to it?
Yes. And actually, one of them was one of the very first ones I learned. And when you learn credit analysis, and they say there are the 5 C's or the 3 C's of credit, and the number one always of that is character.
Okay.
And so it's really understanding and knowing the character of the person that you're dealing with, because finance is a transaction, and working with people of good character. And I think that is something that definitely applies to whatever industry you're in, including theater, that you really want to work with good people. And we've been blessed to have had the ability to work with good people throughout so far. And that is, but I've also found that there really are very good people in theater. And so one of the things then is that if there are good people, you want to treat them the way you would want to be treated by them. So it helps raise you up to try to be the best person you can be as well. Because again, working with people is a transaction, and if you want to work with people with good character, you want other people to work with you, and you want to have the good character as well. And so that's why you really do push yourself to be the best all you can. People are not 100% perfect at that, and so you learn to forgive and move on, including forgiving yourself and moving on.
Yeah.
One of the other lessons that I learned in finance, especially not having had a background in it, was that it is so important to learn by doing. You can read lots of books about finance and take courses, but until you actually do it, it's hard to understand. And I'll give you an example of that. I was working at Standard & Poor's, which is a rating agency, and we rate the debt of, and I was covering the insurance industry. One of my insurance clients came to me one day and said, we would like, the chief financial officer asked me, would you be interested in joining us? We have a position as their vice president of mergers and acquisitions. I had never done mergers and acquisitions, but he was looking for someone with a credit background. And I interviewed with the executive vice president, and they asked the CEO if he wanted to interview me, and he had meetings with me on the other side because he was a client of ours. So he said, no, I know his work, it's fine. And so after 2 quick interviews, I moved over there and was doing something I had never done before. And it was learning. I did that for 5 years, and then they asked me, we want you to move over to our investment side, our asset management business. We want to restructure how it's working at the same time that we're about to go public. But things aren't working, but we can't put our finger on it. So I actually had to engage in a listening tour with all of our insurance companies and other people involved. And not to get too technical, it basically involved planning investment income and dealing with the investment accounting, 2 areas I knew nothing about. But I was the project manager and had to put together a project plan to put this in place because we actually had to get this done in order to go public. And it was a 3-year project, and we went public. We filed our first financials. We survived our first audit. appropriately. And then it was running smoothly, and I found I put myself out of a job because they didn't need someone to build anything else anymore. Again, it was learning by doing this.
Yeah.
And going into theater is the same. I think that it is incredibly both fulfilling but necessary to learn by doing, because every project is different and will have different issues.
Yes. And this credit and debt background that you have from that industry, that's like seems like a perfect talent or skill to have when you come into producing, investing, co-producing, working in theater, because it's all about minimizing debt and credit to get the profit back rolling, because you put up a lot of money, to start a production with the hopes that it catches on and people come. How has credit, the credit debt background translated for you with producing and working in theater? Are there themes that you're seeing in the crossover and important things to look out for?
Yes. The two that I've really found that are most applicable are the return on investment, and you can sort of define what that investment is. It's partly financial, partly time, partly talent.
Yeah.
And the risk management side of it. How can people involved with this project minimize the risk of losing the entire investment, which has happened to many shows and some good shows.
Yeah.
And so you always have to be mindful of both sides of that equation. But I have found that part of that return on investment is there is the financial side, but there is also the experiential side. There are some investors who get into theater because they love the experience. And so you want to make sure that it's a financial success and an experiential success. But if it can only be one of them, it better be one of them. Typically, when it's a financial success, it is an experiential success.
Yeah.
But we know that the financial success rate is fairly low in theater. And so in order to have people coming back and wanting to still be part of the industry, it really is producers and the creative team and the cast, everybody coming together and having a leadership team driving this forward to make sure that at least everybody feels like they've had a good experience and that they've grown. It should be a growth experience as well for the entire cast and creative side.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is really, really educational because, well, there's a few things. I'm getting excited now. Okay. And I had read this quote about Warren Buffett a while back. It makes him so great. What makes him so great is that he doesn't act on emotion. When it comes to numbers and money, it's unemotional. It's, what's the downside? What's the upside? Is it worth this investment? Just factually on the sheet. There's no but I feel it's a really great opportunity and I'm curious. And obviously it's working for him. I'm curious. Have you, of course we have all acted on emotion. I'm curious how you've gotten better at removing emotion from, these financial decisions, or maybe any advice you'd give on it, because acting unemotionally can really save you.
Yes.
From something that may not actually look good on the spreadsheet.
And I think that there have been learnings along the way, because the first couple of investments that I made in theater did not end up being financially successful for one reason or another. But each one of those had a specific learning. And through multiple experiences, you really get to identify trends, the same way that if you're investing in the stock market, you can identify economic trends, industry trends. You can also identify some of those in the theater. and for specific shows and the way that specific shows are being run and produced. Again, you want to work with people of good character, but also people who have the sense to know what they're doing, or if there's a piece of it that they're uncertain of, they know exactly where to go to ask for help, and they're not afraid to ask for help as well. You want... Theater is always going to be, in part, emotional and reactive. People will react to a piece of theater.
Of course.
Whether it's a play or a musical.
Yeah.
And people will want to participate in what moves them in some way. And so not every show is for everybody. And there are shows that we've been offered that we have declined to participate in. And part of this is from our learning, either because it didn't hit us on the passion side, or because we had questions on the financial side that couldn't be answered to our satisfaction.
Yeah.
And there are no financial guarantees in theater, obviously.
Yes.
But if someone is risking their well-earned money, you want to make sure that you're being a responsible steward of their financial investment.
Of course.
And then on the flip side, you want to be a responsible steward of their emotional investment as well.
Well said. That's really well said. Yeah, I think we're going to leave that right there. That's really good. I want to start talking about DDM Productions.
Okay.
It's you, Dane Levins, Michael Mills, and a newer company. This is a newer group.
Yes, it is.
That's been put together. Dane is your partner.
Dane is my husband.
Your husband. Where did you guys meet? I don't even know the answer to that question.
Oh, this is...
Or how did you meet?
How did it meet?
Yeah.
Well, back in 2001, I was doing a summer share out in the Hamptons,
Okay.
as some people do. And I just had one of those weekends where not a lot was going right.
Okay.
I came back from July 4th weekend and single, and I just... The early days of the internet
Yeah.
and dating on the internet. And
It's very different than it is now.
yes, it is. There were no apps,
Yeah, there was no app for that. Yeah.
but I was just in one of those moods, and I just said, who else is out there?
Yeah.
And I took the New York geographic restriction off of what I was searching,
Right.
and I saw Dane's profile. There was a photo of him.
Yeah.
Turned out it was at this restaurant that's halfway up Mount Haleakala in Maui, where he had been with a friend of his. And the photo spoke to me. What he said
Yeah.
spoke to me. And I was just in one of those types of moods that said, well, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
And I want to come back to that as well.
Okay.
So I wrote to him.
Yeah.
And he wrote back. One of the reasons, and he has told many people this story, is he got this letter that had an introductory paragraph, the main focus, and then a conclusion.
Yeah.
It was everything was spelled correctly. It was grammatical, and that spoke to him. So we were emailing back and forth. Then we got on the phone. He lived an hour and a half from where my parents live in California. So I visited my parents, who are no longer with us, and decided to do a long weekend there. And we met in person, and that was when we knew it was meant to be.
That's incredible. When you know, you know.
Yes.
And the thing, and the reason I ask about Dane, because I don't usually ask people that I'm interviewing, like, where'd you meet your husband? Where'd you meet your wife? Is that you guys work together as well. And I think that's
We do now.
Now you do. And that is incredible to me. That, to have like a working relationship and a personal relationship and the balance between the two, because they're different. And you're running a business and you're running, and they're different. And that's why I was so curious where you guys met. But the reason I bring him up is because it's Drew, Dane, Michael Productions, DDM. And where did you, and we're going to come back to Dane as well. Where did you meet? How did Michael come about?
Michael came about through Broadway Cares originally.
Okay.
So Broadway Cares has 2 events after they raise all the money in the red buckets. One is now called the Red Bucket Follies, and the other one is Easter Bonnet. Yeah. And after those events, for the donors, they have a little dinner afterwards. And we ended up sitting down with Michael and his partner, and we just became fast friends. They came to our wedding. We've seen them socially a lot together. We knew that they had an interest in theater. Dane joined me on some of the theater investment and producing when we got married back in 2015. He just said, now that we're married, I'd love to have both our names on it.
Yeah, why not?
Michael, last year, had just taken the CTI class for producing.
What is
Commercial
this?
Theater Institute.
Okay.
And they do courses for producing. And he knew that I had invested and produced theater. And he wrote me an email and said, I just took the CTI class. Let me help you win you a Tony. I
all right.
immediately called him back and I said, I have a fascinating idea.
Yeah.
How about we all try to get into this crazy business?
Yeah.
And there were 2 projects that I had under consideration at the time that I shared with him, and he was just in the right headspace, but also the right point in his career to consider this as well. And that is when we decided to work together and form DDM.
And we're coming up on a year?
Yeah.
About a year. And now was DDM the company a part of the After Forever?
No, that was
just
yes.
Great. Okay. So we're covering a lot here. So then you guys get together, you've created this, and now alone, like you and Dane have had success now with the TV, with Amazon Prime.
Well, we have.
We could say.
Yes, we've had a little bit of that, and that came up again through relationships, and again crediting Broadway Cares.
Yeah, wow.
And so you can see how everything comes back to. I love following the tree of relationships and see with the branches and how projects and experiences grow from those and other relationships.
Yes.
So Broadway Cares, and this is back in 2010, 2011, had a salon for major donors on Central Park South in this beautiful apartment, and with a group of performers who were each singing one number, and it was emceed by Kevin Spiritus, who we had known. He had also been on One Life to Live, but we had actually seen him off Broadway. Funny thing about him, he was Hugh Jackman's understudy in The Boy from Oz and never got to go on for Hugh because he was there every time.
He doesn't call out.
No. But we had become friends with Kevin, and Kevin went on a vacation, had a bit of an eye-opening religious type experience about what are we doing here, what are we creating, and came back and said, I want to create something. I want to write a story and have something that's going to be a lasting legacy. And we said, it's going to be about loss and recovery from loss and how people move forward. And we said, we're all in on this. tell us what you need. How can we help?
And he's saying at the same time, this is going to be a TV show.
No, he did not know. So they were going to write a script. So he reconnected with a Days of Our Lives writing partner, Michael Slade, who had lost his partner some years earlier. And so this was a very cathartic experience for both of them. And they wrote what ended up being season 1 of After Forever, which is now a web series on Amazon Prime. 8 episodes, total of 88 minutes. And Kevin came to us as executive producers, bouncing ideas off of us, but they were really in writing the project and had an idea of how they wanted to film it. They have a producer on the ground in Los Angeles, Alison Van Noor, who is spectacular. And they came to New York and filmed all 8 episodes in 11 days. Very much on a shoestring budget.
Wow.
And Kevin's co-lead on this, Mitchell Anderson, had retired from acting for the past 14 years and owns a restaurant, is opening another one now in Atlanta. He came back to do this specifically. And so in some ways, we just knew that after we read it, that Kevin and Michael had created something really good. And then they worked on the editing and were able to get it distributed through Amazon. And the next thing we know, earlier this year, it was nominated for 8 Emmy Awards.
Classic.
And it was this little show out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so the next thing Kevin says is, get your black ties dusted off. We're going to LA.
Yeah.
And we fly out there, never having been to anything like that before.
Yeah.
Red carpet, the hallway, and they put the digital web series with the daytime. Yeah, and this was in early May, and it's over 2 nights. And we had 8 nominations in 6 categories. After Forever won 5, including Best Digital Drama Series.
That's incredible. How fun.
It was surreal and amazing, but the show itself, and we were actually able to watch it. There was Kevin organized a New York screening of all 8 episodes.
Okay.
Last spring that we could see on a big screen, and watching it that way was just very powerful.
Yeah.
And it has toured some of the film festivals as well.
So have you guys decided to continue in a television route, or is that an offshoot one?
Well,
and done. We'll see what happens.
Well,
kind
there
of
are
thing.
seasons 2 and 3 that are written and still to be filmed, and so we will be involved in that.
Okay.
But this is one of those offshoot. Our focus really has been theater.
Yeah.
But we realize there is a lot of creative content out there in different media.
Yeah.
That you can work with, and a lot of great work going on. And sometimes it just helps to know the right people. Sometimes it just helps to have something that you connect with. And I should tell you, one of the reasons why I connected with this is that I had a friend, and I call him one of my 2 guardian angels from when I came out here in New York, who developed lymphoma cancer and passed away at the age of 36. And so a lot of people, the story of loss and being able to move on from loss resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, we all experience it.
And
yeah.
Kevin and Michael had come up with this idea for all of those of us who were involved as producers on the project to dedicate it to the people who we had lost. And so it's a very nice tribute to being able to accomplish what the series is setting out to do.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. I think it's so important, especially storytelling, which is what we're talking about, to tell stories that can educate, where people can learn from them. And it's even more enjoyable when we can mask the education with pure entertainment, humor, and just being entertained. Because some people don't want to sit down and watch a documentary. You know, they want to be entertained. And if you can teach a lesson on emotions or life with that, that's where the power is. That's the good stuff.
People learn in different ways.
Yes.
Some people learn by being entertained. Some people learn by documentaries. Some people learn by doing the experiential, the people who go on a safari to really learn about the animals, the endangered animals there. Mm-hmm. It's the reason why people take those experiential vacations. There is so much to learn in this world and so many ways to learn it. And so there's no right way and no wrong way to learn as long as you're constantly learning. Funny enough, one of the sayings that we actually have at the executive recruiting firm is that when we talk about careers, we really break it down into three basic fundamentals: money, fun, and learning. But the most rewarding over the long term really is the learning piece of it.
Yeah, it is. And on the vein of learning, in terms of questions that you ask, how have you gotten better at asking questions, or what questions to ask when producing new work?
I've always asked questions. I've always been inquisitive. I've always been curious, and one of the things that a lot of employers look for is that intellectual curiosity. I think that is a huge piece of being successful in whatever career you're in, whatever field. I go back to finance a little bit because
Please.
My first job coming out of the training program was in credit. My first 3 jobs were in credit analysis. And so one of the things that you do in credit analysis is you analyze a lot of numbers, but you ask a lot of questions. And that is really where I learned to ask questions about, where is management taking this company? What are this company's strategic competitive advantages, which can obviously have an impact on the success of a company over the longer term. To, why are you doing this financial maneuver now? And so when you move that into the theater world, you can start asking questions about the revenue side. What is the integrity of these revenue projections? The ticket sales. So many are estimated to be premium tickets. So many are regular. So many are discounted. What percentage capacity of the theater are you going to have filled every night?
What size theater do you want? How many people do you expect?
What is your average ticket price going to be? And all of these have an impact on the revenue side. Then on the expense side, if you're talking to a producer, how scrappy is one word for it, but how responsible are they going to be with the dollars that they have? Do they tend to be a little bit more spendthrift, or do they tend to be a little bit more thrifty? And where you do spend, are you going to get more of a return on the marketing budget than on other parts of it? Or how important is the set? How important is it to get this particular cast member? And so there are a lot of questions that you can ask. But I think it's also important to ask, why did you get involved with this production? What does this say to you? Why is this important to you? I think that those are important questions that can help drive the experiential side of things as well. Because if people are really passionate about what they're trying to produce and what they're trying to put on stage night after night, it will show up in their work.
It will. And you can see it in some shows translate into the lobby and into the outside of the building, which is really cool because you're not just going into the theater to see a show. It's like you're stepping into another world.
Yes.
And I love that. Interesting. Okay. Sorry. Was there another?
No. Just in terms of questions that one asks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I think you can always turn it in on yourself as well. You ask yourself questions. You may not have all the answers. And that's the other, bringing this to our getting into producing. I think one of the things that we have done, we know what questions to ask. And I think that that's more important. We may not have all the answers,
Right.
but we can go out and get them. We're not afraid to go out and get them, but we also don't have the ego to think that we know everything to begin with, because we definitely don't.
Because that'll mess you up.
Right.
That's so true. Oh, that's so true. Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering if there's another one in there about, not having the ego, staying unemotional. But even the question you said at the beginning there, when you were working in the other side of finance, of what is the strategic financial goal of this endeavor or company? Mm-hmm. I mean, what would that look like if you ask yourself that question? And how would that change your spending habits and your entertainment habits and stuff? And I just think these are really good questions to ask ourselves, especially when we're entering, people who recently graduated college, younger adults to ask, or even older adults to ask these questions, because it can really change your day-to-day behavior and choices, because we don't look at ourselves like companies. But if you do for a second, it's really interesting the answers you might find.
It is. And even something as unemotional as a company will have certain team building events, retreats, their holiday party. This is not advancing their long-term goal of whatever industry that they're in.
No.
But it really does help build the cohesion of the team.
And the morale.
Of the team. Yeah. If you just translate that, and I've never thought about it this way, in terms of just doing that for yourself, there are some, the two most important investments that you have are time and money. Mm-hmm. And you will do some of this with your time in terms of, I just need to decompress for a second and I'll play a game on an app on a phone for a little bit just to clear my head. Mm-hmm. And there could be that on the time side. On the money side, you can say, I've always wanted to try this one restaurant that everybody's been talking about, and if you love food, then you want to share that experience with some friends, and you can make that a bonding session with people who are important relationships in your life.
Yeah.
So there are, those are a little bit of the short term, but it's also important to think about the long-term investment, and it really is how you invest in the relationships and building those over time, mm-hmm. Nurturing them. Yeah. I read somewhere is the power of weak connections. People that you don't see every day, like we were talking about earlier, mm-hmm.
but you can pick up right where you left off.
Right.
And that, if you can maintain those sort of relationships, because people are your best resource, that's the way to
If you know
grow.
5 people, it's easy. If you know 50 people, it's okay. If you know 500 people, it gets more difficult. If you know 5,000 people, it gets very difficult to do that.
So how are you, and I'm just curious if we get into a little logistical conversation here, do you have a way in organizing people that you meet and know, or is it simply in your contacts or Rolodex?
The electronic Rolodex?
Yeah.
And I'm still of an age that I still have the business card Rolodex as well.
I was about to get one. No, serious, because you still get business cards. I mean, I get business cards.
Absolutely. And it's amazing when you
tangible.
go through those business cards and then you say, I haven't thought about this person. And then you look up on LinkedIn where they are and you say, oh, wow, how did they get there?
I got to congratulate them.
I've got to congratulate them. They got there 3 years ago, but
Yeah.
and that happens. Or then you realize that they've had major moments in their lives that you want to catch up on. And more often than not, funny enough, people remember you. And I don't think I appreciated that as much early on in my life as I do now, because I just thought that, I was just one person cog in the wheel who's going to remember me. But people do remember the positive experiences that they've had in their lives. They also remember the negative ones. So hopefully you've made you're positively reinforcing your image with every experience that you have with people.
Oh, yeah.
But they will remember that, and it will trigger, back to chemistry, a little reaction in the brain that says, oh, I remember that. And
I remember how you made me feel.
yes.
Good, bad.
What do they call it? Releasing dopamine? Or
Yeah, right.
And that is a way that you really can stay connected to people. You have shared experiences throughout your life.
Yeah.
And that's the one resource that you have that most people don't think about, is that you have experiences and shared memories, and you should treasure those. And, I don't want to say use them, but they are helpful to connect people for life and connect people more closely than you would otherwise expect. And I've had that happen to me with people who I haven't seen in 10, 20 years. People back in college, I remember we did this in college. And sometimes I have to remember.
And you're like, sure enough, I do now recall.
Yes.
That's so great. Keeping along this, like, the logistical conversation of organizing, we were talking about email before we started. And I'm curious if you're willing to add a little bit to how you go about organizing emails.
Imperfectly.
Let's say we're all a work in progress.
We
with
are
it, right?
all a work in progress. But I have my email inbox. I have folders. I tend to keep everything in a folder.
Are these all Google folders, or are these like smart mailboxes through iCalendar?
It's folders associated with the email.
With the email.
With
Got
the
it.
email. Okay. And once something is done or filed, or I don't have to do anything with it, I can keep it there and I can search for it and I can go back to refer to it. But the inbox really is for things to do. And then, because everybody's inbox creeps up on them, and I really do bow down to the people who can manage that down to close to zero, and there are some people who can do that. I have not found that I'm one of those people yet, but we're always striving to get better.
See, and that's a great point, because I've just gotten mine to no mail, like empty mailbox, and then all of a sudden I'm looking through my calendar and I've organized away things that aren't done, and I'm like, oh crap, I got to keep those, like you just said, the to-do list. I got to keep those emails right there that I haven't done yet, and then put them in a folder. Because that's the rookie mistake.
It's good to have them right there in your face.
Rookie mistake.
Right there in your face.
Yeah.
But then I also coordinate that with, on Apple, they have their notes and reminders, and I will use the notes as a daily planner for the day to check off, but I will have reminders in different categories of what I'm dealing with, whether I'm dealing with DDM, whether I'm dealing with personal finance issues, whether I'm dealing with one of the other businesses, all of these. And then there will be other things, because you have to run your own life as well.
Essentially.
And life doesn't seem to get more simple as you go through the years.
It's more and more.
And so one of the things that I've actually tried to do, and keep in my mind, is declutter. And I think that that's everybody's a lot of people's New Year's resolution is I'm going to declutter. I experienced this personally when I had to clean out my parents' home when we were going to sell the house. My mom had just passed. My dad was still living. But they had both been in assisted living and away from the house. And I was managing the house at the time out in California, even though I was living here. And I fondly call my parents' story when a pack rat marries a hoarder. And
What a visual.
my mom apologized to me from there. She said, I'm sorry for what you're going to find in the house, because from all appearances, the house looked neat and clean, and you opened every drawer and closet and you found everything.
Wow.
And it was one of those things where they had packed up their memories and some things that were important to their families. And so it has to be gone through piece by piece, because you don't want to lose any of that. You, as you said, building up these experiences. And I have found that, I have things from my mom's family that I've given to my aunt. And, our families, they're in Michigan for the most part, but we get together once a year, a family reunion, but we able to share some of these memories as she's getting older.
Yeah.
It's just important to, because so you're managing the things,
Right.
and then you're getting back to your point, Clay. You're managing the lists, the email, the to-do list.
Yeah.
And it really does take a lot of organization and discipline.
It does. It does. Because, and this is the thing that I'm struggling with, because as I traverse the entertainment landscape, for instance, this morning I was at CVS getting a new passport photo, and I get to the post office with my passport thing filled out, and they're like, invalid, because it was filled out in blue ink. It's got to be black ink. And I'm sitting there and I was like, this would not be happening to me if we were sitting at like a table discussing a new show we want to create. You know what I mean? But there are rules that are set forth by like, federal, state, like things like personal. That's a personal life thing that it's like, well, there's no negotiating this.
Right.
And I need to allot time emotionally and actually for these sort of things, like cleaning out the house, but then also getting back to your business emails and getting that to-do list and having this interview, the entertainment interview and whatnot.
We talked about the intellectual curiosity before. One of the other things that I have learned from the finance side as well is attention to detail. And that is an important skill set that is definitely transferable to theater or to running one's life. And that is, you just start building that up. The one thing that flies in the face of attention to detail that I've found living in New York is sleep. And it's one of the things that I have fallen short of my goals of getting quality sleep from time to time.
Yep.
And I have made it a point over the last couple of years just to say, I want to target 7 hours. I may not get it all the time. My mind might race at night. But I feel that if I get 7 is good for me. I know some people are good with 8. Some people
I'm at 8. Yeah. But 7. Yeah.
But I find that's just so important to refresh and reinvigorate your mind.
It's important. And making that non-negotiable, with yourself.
Yes.
Like sleep is not, because so many things come up, and then it suffered. Like for me, the same thing in the morning though. It's like if I go to bed too late, then I let myself have that extra hour in the morning, and then that screws up the next day. And it's like, if you can just get to bed. So yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this. These are like really good things. I don't think that are talked about, but they're basic human needs that are important.
They're basic human needs. We're all humans, and as we all learn, especially with everything is connected.
Yes. Yeah, and it all connects to the next day. Do you have most gifted books? Favorite books you've read or reading or?
Oh, I was a big reader, and I want to get back to it again. Time being the issue. I can think of 2 that are very different books.
Great.
One of which I read in high school for a geometry class.
Okay.
You're like, what?
Yeah.
They read books. It's probably in the science fiction section, and it's called Flatland by Edwin Abbott. And it talks about and lays out a society of two-dimensional creatures. And with a caste system that the females are circles and the lowest on the pyramid are triangles, no pun intended. And then it goes up to the highest or many-sided figures. It's visited by a three-dimensional object passing through the plane. And of course, they're all scared. They all ask a lot of questions, try to wrap their minds around what this is, find a way to really learn what it is and not be afraid of it. And then the book really ends with the two-dimensional creature saying, well, if this is the third dimension, what is the fourth? And I've always found that fascinating because the fourth dimension is obviously time, and we, living in 3 dimensions, have to go through our lives in a whole series of planes of time. And of course, the big thing in entertainment these days is the multiverse and different timelines. Everybody's doing time jumping.
Oh, yeah.
But I think there's a fascination with that fourth dimension the same way that this book, which was written decades ago, had. But it just was one of those that, they saw the three-dimensional creature as an enemy to begin with. And I've always had this idea that, I've said before, time is man's mortal enemy. But it doesn't have to be. Because time is something that we have no control over, but we can use as we see fit. It's non-renewable. And we don't have control over it, but we can control how we react to it. And so that's why that book has always fascinated me. The other one, having to do with relationships, is a book written by Keith Ferrazzi called Never Eat Alone. And it really is a book that I found very relatable about generating and nurturing relationships. He was someone who did not come from a world of high mucky mucks, but was able to meet a lot of influential people through his being able to ask questions, but his being able to engage and follow through from having met people all the time. And that is just one of those standards that I try to hold myself up to.
Yeah.
And so those are the 2 books that I would say have influenced me.
I haven't read either of those, and I'm going to. I like that. Never Eat Alone and Flatland. Thank you. As we wrap up here, is there a billboard quote, metaphorically speaking, word or phrase that you would put up for people to see, read, consider? Yes, there is one. And for this, I have to credit Natalie Douglas. Natalie Douglas I met her when she was a waitress at Brandy's, the piano bar on the Upper East Side. She is one of the most decorated MAC Award-winning cabaret artists now. And we've been blessed that she has actually performed at a couple of our annual holiday parties for Broadway Cares. But we went to one of her cabaret shows, and she had this quote, which has stuck with me, and I actually used it at one of the parties as well. If you have the opportunity to work with good musicians who are good people, do it. And I always translate that to the Hunter S. Thompson quote about music really is the gasoline in your drive through life. He's having the car radio on. Yeah.
And since, like I said, music is my first language. When she says that, I just think the people who make the good music, the good musicians in your life, are all the people who you have these wonderful relationships with. And if you have the opportunity to make music with them, and they're good people, those are the situations that you really want to throw yourselves into.
That's great. And I agree. I can't help but agree with that. Yes. This conversation has been absolutely wonderful. I'm so glad that we could sit down and I could learn more about you and you could share more for other people to learn about life and yourself. Is there anything that you just want to touch on? Anything we missed? Any points, last parting things you want to add in here? Or have we wrapped it up just about for now?
Oh, well, I'm sure that there are other things that we could touch on.
Oh, yeah.
But this has been absolutely wonderful, and self-reflection like this and being able to verbalize things, really is good, because one of the relationships that you have to nurture is the relationship with yourself.
Yes. One of the relationships that you have to nurture is the one with yourself. Yes. Sorry, keep going. It's true, and it's nice that we can talk about it. You can
absolutely. And so Dane and Michael and I are all excited to have started DDM, and we're looking to do more in the world of theatrical production. And I love the fact that the three of us work together. We all bring complementary skills to this, and that's one of the reasons why we all came together. Michael has a marketing background. Dane has a finance, accounting, administration background, and I have, also a finance, but really more of a strategic and hopefully imaginative background. And so the three of us, when we put all this together, and Michael's got a very imaginative background as well, that we're hoping that we can accomplish great things with the help of the community that we're really putting together.
Yeah, it's a nice trifecta of talents. That's absolutely wonderful. Wow. Well, that just about does it for us for this one. I'll put the links in. I was going to ask, where we can find you on the interwebs. I know I'll add LinkedIn. Obviously, is a wonderful resource.
LinkedIn is one place. The other place is ddmproductionsnyc.com.
Yeah,
and you can find a lot of information about projects that we've been involved with and upcoming projects that we are currently involved with.
Super, super exciting. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.
Well, thank you so much, Clay.
Drew, this has been wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Drew Desky.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.